Hello, and welcome to another week of Noetic Resonance. This week again, we're going to have another fake sponsor from our favorite game, Review My Thingy. I say our favorite. I love it. I hope y'all do too, as much as I do. This week, our episode is brought to you by 4th period PE class. 5 out of 5 stars. A hole-in-the-wall joint where locals go if you want to avoid tourists. Great authentic feel. What the fuck? Oh, goodness. Anyways, that's a good start for our episode this week. Bring some humor into this awfulness that we know of prescription and over-the-counter medications in America. I know it can be scary and annoying and all those things and very angering, but the good news is the power is in our control to make a difference on our own lives and those of others by simply having the knowledge and using that in our own lives. Last week, we opened the medicine cabinet and looked at the everyday pills we take without a second thought, the aspirins and antihistamines that sit on our kitchen counters. But today we're going to look behind the pharmacy counter. We're talking about the heavy hitters, the prescriptions that don't just clear your sinuses or dull a headache, but actually reach into the machinery of your brain and turn the dials. We often think of medication as a straight line. You have a symptom, you take a pill, the symptom goes away. But chemistry is rarely that clean, unfortunately, guys. Every light casts a shadow. Today we're exploring the chemical shadow, those rare, hidden, and sometimes terrifying side effects that can alter your personality, hijack your impulses, and leave you wondering who is actually in the driver's seat of your own mind. From the allergy pill that can trigger inexplicable rage to the sleep aid that creates a doppelganger who drives your car while you're unconscious, we are peeling back the label on the hidden life of prescription drugs. Before we dive in, a vital reminder, I'm a podcast host, not a pharmacist or a doctor. The information in this episode is for educational and storytelling purposes only. Never stop taking a prescribed medication or change your dosage based on something you heard on a podcast. These side effects, while documented, are specific to individual chemistry. If you recognize any of the behaviors we discussed today in yourself or a loved one, please consult a medical professional immediately. So, if you're ready to see what happens when the cure starts tinkering with the soul, let's get into it. This first category is arguably the most shadow-like because it doesn't just make people feel sick. It makes them act like someone else entirely. In the medical world, these are known as dopamine agonists, and the phenomena they can cause are called impulse control disorders, ICDs. The mechanism is hijacking the reward circuit. To understand the side effect, you have to understand the chemical. Dopamine is the brain's motivation chemical. It tells you, that felt good, do it again. The drugs like Mirapex and Requip are designed to mimic dopamine to help those whose brains don't produce enough, like those with Parkinson's, or to calm jittery nerves like restless leg syndrome. These meds specifically target D3 receptors. While the D2 receptors handle movement, the D3 receptors are located in the limbic system, the part of your brain that handles emotions, cravings, and rewards. The result is the drug floods the reward center. Suddenly, the brain's brake pedal is cut, and the gas pedal is floored. The most chilling part is that these behaviors are often completely out of character for the patient. There's pathological gambling that can happen. This is the most common ICD associated with these medications. Patients who have never even bought a lottery ticket suddenly find themselves driving 3 hours to a casino or spending thousands on online slots. They don't gamble for the win. They gamble because the drug has made the act of risking money provide a chemical high that the brain can no longer resist. There's also hypersexuality. Patients may experience an intense, uncontrollable increase in libido. This often manifests as a compulsive use of pornography, seeking out affairs, or acting in ways that jeopardize their marriages and reputation. It often creates immense shame as the person's moral self is at war with their chemical self. I can tell you on this one, this is part of the reason why some Alzheimer's patients or patients in nursing homes have some of these hypersexual behaviors. It's a side effect of these medications, and we're just like, oh, they're old, it's normal or whatever, but it's not always normal. It's not always a part of that disease process. It can totally be a side effect of these. When I worked in the nursing home, I can't tell you how many people are on these medications and they take it 3, 4 times a day. It's crazy. The other thing it can cause is called punding. It's one of the most bizarre effects. That's a fascinating one because it's a compulsive performance of repetitive, purposeless tasks. These are some examples. Someone might spend 12 hours straight disassembling and reassembling a toaster, sorting a button collection by size and shade, or endlessly grooming their fingernails. It is a literal loop of the unconscious mind trapped in a cycle of doing without any reason. Sounds like some of those silly redundant disciplines that my parents gave me whenever I was young for whenever I got in trouble. There's a true crime and legal angle here, though. There have been massive class action lawsuits against drug manufacturers because patients lost their entire life savings, homes, and families to gambling and spending sprees before they realized the medication was the cause. And there's also the who am I crisis. When the medication is stopped, the impulses usually vanish almost overnight. This leaves the patient to wake up in the wreckage of a life they ruined while under the influence, creating a massive psychological trauma. If a pill can make you bet your house on a game of blackjack, do you really have control over your personality, or are you just a collection of chemical reactions? There's also walkabout syndrome, which is compulsive wandering. Some patients on these meds develop an uncontrollable urge to drive or walk with no destination, which is crazy because I know that my sister experienced this when she was still alive. She would go wandering for hours and hours and hours, and sometimes she would be found at 4 a.m. and the police would call and have us come get her because she would just have been at a park wandering around for hours. It's crazy. There are accounts of people, too, leaving their house for a quick walk and being found miles away hours later, unable to explain why they kept moving. It's the body being led by an unconscious urge to escape or seek, even when the conscious mind has nowhere to go. The other thing that happens is excessive dopamine spending. Unlike normal shopping spree, it's a shopping mania. People have been known to buy 5 of the same lawnmower or 50 pairs of shoes in a single afternoon. They don't even want the items. They're just addicted to the moment of the transaction. It's a chemical greed that has nothing to do with the person's actual character. When they come off the meds, they often look at all the mountain of boxes with total confusion, as if a stranger bought them. This one is a really unfun one, especially for us that are trying to eat well and be healthy. The sleep eating twist. While we usually associate this with Ambien, dopamine agonists can also cause binge eating disorder. Patients wake up to find their kitchen raided and wrappers everywhere. They aren't hungry. The drug has simply removed the I'm full signal to the brain. It's the hungry shadow, the part of us that always wants more, magnified by that pill. These drugs are essentially character assassins. They take a person's values, thriftiness, fidelity, or calm and temporarily delete it. In the ancient world, if a man suddenly lost his savings to a dice game or couldn't stop wandering the desert, they would say he was under the influence of a spirit. Today, we say he's under the influence of a dopamine agonist. The symptoms are identical, only the language has really changed. It's not just one pill or one brand. It's an entire family of chemicals, too. Whether it's a pill like Mirapex, a patch like Nupro, or even an injection of apomorphine, they all share the same skeleton. They're all keys designed to fit into that D3 receptor, the lock that guards your brain's reward and desire center. When that lock is turned too far, the shadow is let out. So if you or another is showing signs or symptoms of these things, it may be one of these meds. If you think this may be something you're personally taking and giving you side effects, you can ask your doctor or you can Google that medication and see. If you're already wondering, though, it probably is that. Next, we're going to cover Montelukast, singular, which you can get over the counter, but they do prescribe it as well. It's a category 2, where the chemical shadow becomes truly heartbreaking because it is often involved with some of the most vulnerable patients, like children. While the first category, dopamine agonist, targets the reward center, this category targets inflammation. But in doing so, it can accidentally set the brain's emotional security system on fire. It's a blockbuster medication for asthma and seasonal allergies. It works by blocking the leukotrienes, like I said, which are chemicals your body releases when you breathe in an allergen like pollen that cause swelling in your lungs. It was long thought that these drugs stayed in the lungs and nasal passages. However, research now shows that Montelukast can cross the blood-brain barrier. Once inside the brain, it can trigger a cascade of neuropsychiatric events. The FDA was forced to issue the most severe warning, a boxed warning or black box warning in 2020 because the behavioral changes were so drastic. Parents have reported Jekyll and Hyde transformation where a peaceful, mild-mannered child suddenly becomes violent, screaming, or even biting. This isn't a tantrum, it's a chemical agitation that the child cannot control. The other side effect is vivid, terrifying night terrors that are one of the most common hidden symptoms. Patients describe dreams so cinematic and frightening that they are afraid to go back to sleep. For teenagers and adults, this drug has been linked to sudden severe depression and suicidal ideation. Chillingly, these thoughts can appear even in people with no history of mental illness. This is the ultimate shadow because the symptoms look exactly like a new mental health disorder like ADHD, bipolar, or depression. Often, doctors don't realize the allergy pill is the cause, so they prescribe more medication to treat the side effects of the first one. Unlike a rash or stomach ache, you can't see this side effect. You can only see the shadow version of the person's personality. Imagine giving your child a pill to help them breathe, only to have that same pill still their peace of mind. This is a critical and often overlooked detail in the person taking the medication. They're often the last one to notice the change. Official medical advice now suggests that patients tell their friends and family they are starting Montelukast because the shadow alters your perception and mood. You might feel like the world has become a darker place, whereas a friend might notice you've become uncharacteristically irritable or withdrawn. Because it's often prescribed as an add-on treatment for asthma, it's seen as a supplemental pill rather than a primary rescue inhaler. Patients and parents often don't think to blame it when behavioral issues arise months later. It sneaks into the daily routine. So these symptoms are some that might want to make you question things if you take Montelukast. If you're having hallucinations, not just seeing things, but a general distortion of reality. Sleep disturbances. This goes beyond nightmares. It includes insomnia and general sleep problems that degrade a person's mental health over time. Or stuttering and tremors. Though rarer, some patients develop physical glitches like speech impediments that vanish once the medication is stopped. They advise if a patient experiences any new or worsening mental health symptoms, the clinical advice is to discontinue use immediately and review the asthma management plan with the doctor. With Singular, the shadow isn't just a metaphor. It's a clinical reality that the medical community is only now fully acknowledging. It reminds us that our personality is a fragile balance of chemistry. If a tiny pill can induce hallucinations and depression in a healthy person, it proves that there are depths to our psyche that can be unlocked by the wrong key. Category 3 is the most cinematic of the groups. These are the Z drugs, most famously zolpidem, also known as Ambien. If Category 1 is about impulses and Category 2 is about mood, Category 3 is about a total break in consciousness. This is the doppelganger category. To understand why this happens, imagine your brain has a save button for memories and a gatekeeper for physical movement. Ambien works by slowing down the brain activity to help you sleep. It targets GABA receptors, which are like the brain's off switch. In some people, the drug puts the conscious mind to sleep, but leaves the motor system, the part that moves your arms and legs, wide awake. Even worse, it disables the part of the brain that creates memories. The result is you become a functional zombie. You are moving, talking, and acting, but nobody is home, and there is no recording being made of the events. The FDA has actually required black box warnings for these drugs because the side effects aren't just weird, they are dangerous. People have been pulled over for driving erratically in their pajamas, having no idea they even left their bed because they're sleep driving. They also have the sleep eating that we talked about before. It's called the Ambien kitchen, where patients wake up to find their kitchen in total disarray, half-eaten frozen pizzas, strange concoctions like butter and salt sandwiches, or even evidence of having used the stove. People don't just eat snacks, they eat things that aren't food. There are documented cases of people eating raw flour, sticks of butter, or even cleaning supplies while in a Z-drug trance. It's a primal, ravenous hunger that ignores all logic and safety. It's the shadow in its most basic animalistic form, pure consumption without discernment. Also, people will have full, logical-sounding conversations with spouses or send detailed, often strange, emails or texts. They are channeling their unconscious thoughts without any filter from their waking ego. There's a rising phenomenon of people waking up to find Amazon delivery notifications for items they don't remember buying as well, often in bulk or very strange items. Or worse, seeing sent messages to ex-partners or bosses. This drug lowers the inhibitions of the subconscious, and the smartphone provides a direct line for that subconscious to speak to the world. There are hundreds of court cases where people have committed crimes, from hit and runs to more serious offenses, and used the Ambien defense, claiming their shadow did it while they were medically unconscious. We like to think of ourself as a single, solid thing, but Category 3 shows us that the self is just a curtain. When the Z-drugs pull that curtain back, we see that the body is perfectly capable of living without us. It's the ultimate nightmare side effect, waking up and finding that your shadow has been busy while you were gone. Many people think that once they wake up, the drug is gone. But for many, especially women, as the body process is slower, the shadow lingers. The FDA actually lowered the recommended dosage for women because the drug stays in the system long enough to have caused impaired driving the next morning, even when the person feels wide awake. You could be driving your kid to school under the influence of last night's shadow, and you wouldn't even know it. When people try to stop taking these drugs, they often experience rebound insomnia that is worse than the original sleeplessness, often accompanied by the intense anxiety or panic. It's as if the shadow doesn't want to be locked back up. This creates a chemical dependency where the patient feels they need the drug to survive, even if they are terrified of the side effects. The body is awake and acting, but the consciousness is gone. It creates a doppelganger effect, a version of you doing things you never do while awake with no memory of them. To wrap up this category, the FDA issued a safety announcement specifically stating that these complex sleep behaviors have resulted in serious injuries and even death from falls, burns, or car crashes. Category 4 is the most subtle, yet perhaps the most profound in how it affects the soul. These are SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Zoloft, Prozac, and Lexapro. If the other categories are about explosive changes like rage, gambling, and sleepwalking, Category 4 is about the great flattening. Most people know serotonin as the happy chemical, but in reality, it's more of a stabilizer. The intent is to stop the basement of your emotions from falling into deep depression or debilitating anxiety. Sometimes while the drug is raising the floor of your emotions, it accidentally lowers the ceiling as well, though. You don't just lose the sadness, you lose the joy, the passion, and the spark. This is medically known as SSRI-induced emotional blunting. Patients often report that they can see someone is crying or hurting, and they logically know they should care, but they feel nothing. It's like watching a movie of their own life through a thick pane of glass. Many artists, writers, and musicians find their muse vanishes. The shadow is often the source of creative tension. When you chemically mute the shadow, the art often goes with it. There's also post-SSRI sexual dysfunction, also known as PSSD. For some, the numbing doesn't just happen in the heart. It happens in the body. Chillingly, for a small subset of people, this numbness can persist even after they stop taking the medication. This is a shadow of indifference. It's the version of you that simply doesn't mind if things go wrong. It's a quiet, polite form of possession where you become a ghost in your own life. When we use SSRIs to silence our pain, are we also silencing the parts of ourselves that make us human? If you can't feel the sting of the world, can you ever truly feel its beauty as well? Here's a checklist of things to look out for if you feel like you're negatively being affected by your SSRI. Do you feel like you're spectating your life rather than living it? Have things you used to love, like hobbies, sex, and food, become meh? Is it harder to cry even when you know you want to? Do you feel chemically polite, agreeing with things because you don't have the emotional energy to disagree? If you answered yes to any of these, you might want to consider that your medication might be the problem. Some people also get the SSRI activation paradox. When some people first start an SSRI, they don't get numb. They get akathisia, which hopefully I'm saying that correctly. It's an extreme inner restlessness. Patients describe it as wanting to jump out of their own skin or a lightning storm in the veins. This is the shadow in its most frantic form because the body is physically revved up while the mind is trying to calm down. It can lead to impulsive, sometimes violent actions. It's a literal mismatch between the body and the soul. There's also the dream state bleed. SSRIs significantly alter the REM cycle, the dream cycle. Many users report extremely vivid, hyper-real dreams that stay with them all day. Sometimes it becomes hard to distinguish between a memory of a dream and a memory of real life. If the medication is forcing the subconscious, the dream world, to become more vivid and real than the waking world, the shadow is essentially taking center stage every time you close your eyes. There's also the compassion fade. Recent studies have suggested that by blunting personal pain, SSRIs can also blunt moral judgment. When we feel less pain ourselves, we sometimes become less sensitive to the pain of others. If someone on these meds become too honest or cold, losing the social filter that empathy usually provides. If your kindness is actually just a byproduct of your own ability to feel pain, who are you when that pain is chemically removed? There's also brain zaps. When someone misses a dose or tries to quit cold turkey, they experience these brain zap sensations like a mild electric shock or a shiver inside the skull. This is the shadow self reasserting itself. It's a physical reminder that your brain has become physically dependent on a synthetic balancer. It's the ghost in the machine letting you know it's still there. In our quest to be normal or happy, we often forget that our flaws, our sensitivity, our tears, even our anger are the very things that connect us to others. Category 4 shows us that when we fix the mind with chemistry, we might accidentally silence the soul. We become efficient, but we become cold. If you're having vivid dreams, another culprit could be beta blockers. These are commonly prescribed for high blood pressure, heart arrhythmias, and most interestingly, performance anxiety or stage fright. These are the ones that end in LOL, propranolol, metoprolol. Because they block adrenaline, but also affect melatonin, they cause intense cinematic nightmares. Beta blockers like propranolol and metoprolol work by blocking the effects of adrenaline, epinephrine. They keep your heart from racing and your hands from shaking. These drugs are lipophilic, meaning they are fat-soluble and can easily slip into the brain. Once there, they interfere with the production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. By suppressing melatonin, these drugs disrupt the architecture of your sleep. Your brain tries to catch up on REM sleep, the dreaming phase, leading to REM rebound. This isn't just about having a bad dream. Patients on beta blockers describe a very specific type of shadow experience, like hyperlucidity, where the dreams are so vivid they feel indistinguishable from reality. Patients often wake up exhausted because it felt like they lived an entire second life overnight. These dreams are often terrifyingly cinematic, being chased, falling, or facing monsters. In Jungian psychology, being chased in a dream is the classic symbol of the shadow trying to get your attention. The medication is physically forcing your subconscious to project these hidden fears into high-definition movies every time you close your eyes. You take a pill to stop your heart from racing during the day, suppressing physical anxiety, so your brain screams that anxiety back at you at night through nightmares. It raises the question, if we refuse to face our fears while awake, will our biology force us to face them while we sleep? Next, we're going to cover thyroid medications, specifically levothyroxine or Synthroid. They're among the most prescribed drugs in the whole world. While they are essentially just a synthetic version of a hormone your body already makes, they have a massive shadow potential because the thyroid is the master regulator of the body's pace. When the dosage is off, even by a microgram, it can feel like your soul is being overclocked or dimmed out. The thyroid gland controls your metabolism, temperature, and heart rate. Taking levothyroxine is like putting a brick on the gas pedal of your cells. The intent is to replace the missing hormones T4 so you aren't sluggish, cold, and depressed like hypothyroidism. The therapeutic window for thyroid medications is incredibly narrow. It's a Goldilocks drug. Too little and you're a ghost, too much and you're a live wire. If the dose is slightly too high, inducing a state of subclinical hyperthyroidism, the side effects look like a total personality shift. Patients often report a shadow anxiety. It's not caused by a stressful event. It's a physical vibration in the chest, a racing heart, and a feeling of impending doom that they can't think their way out of. The other thing is thyroid rage. Much like we discussed with Singular, excess thyroid hormone can cause irritability on a hair trigger. You aren't just annoyed, you are physically prepared for a fight. There's also brain fog and memory gaps. Ironically, if the dose is too low, the shadow is a loss of self. Patients describe feeling stupid, forgetting common words, or losing their spark, which often leads to a misdiagnosis of clinical depression. The most annoying hidden part of the thyroid meds is how picky they are. You have to take it on an empty stomach at the exact same time and wait 30 to 60 minutes to eat. If you take it with coffee, which most people do, the tannins can block absorption. This means your shadow symptoms, fatigue and brain fog, return because of your morning latte. It creates a cycle where the patient feels crazy because their labs say they're fine, but their body feels broken. Never thought that morning cup of coffee was that big of a deal, huh? In esoteric traditions, the thyroid is located at the throat chakra, the center of communication and speaking your truth. When thyroid meds are out of balance, your voice is literally affected, sometimes by hoarseness even. Thyroid meds are a lesson in the middle path. Too much energy and you burn out. Too little and you fade away. We must learn to balance the forces within us so that they serve us rather than enslave us. This is the table salt connection here. We iodize table salt specifically to prevent goiters. But here's the shadow twist. In people with a predisposition to Hashimoto's, a sudden dump of iodine, like a high sodium meal or supplement, can actually trigger the immune system to attack the thyroid harder. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire you were trying to feed. It sounds like science fiction, but if someone's thyroid is dangerously overreactive, like in Graves' disease, doctors use radioactive iodine. The thyroid is so hungry for iodine that it sucks up the radioactive dose, which then proceeds to nuke the gland from the inside out and shut it down. There's also a phenomenon where if you give someone a massive dose of non-radioactive iodine, the thyroid gets scared and temporarily shuts down production entirely. It's like a factory blowing a fuse because too much power came through the lines. So whenever you factor in table salt to how many people are on thyroid medications, for anybody who's a nurse or doctor, you can ask them. I can tell you every single patient I ever took care of, 99% of them were on thyroid medications. I fully believe that table salt has a direct link to that, especially whenever it comes to the iodine. They want to make it out to be one thing, but man, once you really start looking at the brass tacks of it, there is some seedy underside to the things that they give us that they say are safe. Next, we're going to talk about topiramate, Topamax. It was originally an anti-seizure medication, but is now a blockbuster for preventing migraines. It is famously nicknamed Dopamax by patients because of the profound cognitive fog it creates. It causes word-finding difficulty, which is also known as aphasia. Patients will be mid-sentence and completely lose common words like refrigerator or car. It's like the drug is sealing off parts of your vocabulary. It creates a shadow version of yourself that feels unintelligent or disconnected from your own thoughts. It can also change the way your tongue perceives carbonation. Suddenly, soda or sparkling water tastes like flat, metallic battery acid. It's a sensory betrayal. Imagine the shadow of your favorite drink appearing. It looks the same, but the essence has been corrupted. There's also the rebound demon, the medication overuse headache, MOH. Triptans, like sumatriptan, or even over-the-counter ones used too frequently, can cause this side effect. If you take the cure too often, the brain stops trying to regulate its own pain signals. The moment the med wears off, the shadow of the headache returns twice as strong. This is a literal vicious cycle. The more you fight the pain with chemicals, the more the pain feeds on those chemicals to grow stronger. It's a biological demon that requires more and more sacrifice of pills to stay quiet. There's also the blue-gray shift with amiodarone and minocycline. Amiodarone is for heart rhythms, and minocycline is a common antibiotic for acne. This can cause blue-gray skin pigmentation. Under sun exposure, these medications can cause the skin to permanently or semi-permanently turn to a ghostly gray-blue. The medication accumulates in the skin's lysosomes. When you go out into the sunlight with UV exposure, it triggers a chemical reaction that deposits a slate blue or lead-colored pigment in the skin. Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing a literal shadow version of your skin. It's a physical manifestation of the medication's presence that makes the patient look like a character from a gothic novel. Next, we're going to talk about tardive dyskinesia. It's caused by long-term use of antipsychotics like haloperidol or even some GI meds like metoclopramide, also known as Reglan. The hidden side effect is involuntary, repetitive body movements, grimacing, lip smacking, or rapid eye blinking. Also, some people call these commonly tics. So these medications can cause you to have tics. The shadow element here is that the patient often doesn't notice they are doing it. Family and friends see it first. The person has lost control of their facial expressions, the very thing we use to communicate who we are to the world. Their body is acting out a script they did not write. Next, we're going to talk about one that may sound funny but is quite serious and can become an emergency. The permanent erection, priapism, trazodone, or sertraline can cause this. It's an erection that lasts more than 4 hours. Like I said, it sounds like a joke in a commercial. But it's a medical emergency that can lead to permanent damage. It's an example of the body's natural functions being hijacked and locked on the on position by chemistry. Another mystery caused by meds is the stained bone mystery. Minocycline, like I said, that's the antibiotic used to treat long-term acne. It can cause blue-black pigmentation of the skin, teeth, and most shockingly, your bones. It can cause muddy or blue-gray darkening of the shins, the roof of the mouth, or the whites of the eyes. Surgeons have reported opening up a patient for surgery only to find their bones have turned black or blue from years of minocycline use. It's a literal internal shadow. The drug becomes a part of your skeletal structure forever. As we've touched on briefly, some meds don't change your skin, but they change how you view the world's shadows. Digoxin, which is a heart med, can cause xanthopsia, which is where a toxic dose of digoxin has been taken, where everything has a yellow-green tint. Many art historians believe Vincent van Gogh's heavy use of yellow in his later paintings like The Starry Night was actually caused by digitalis toxicity. He was literally painting the world as his medication made him see it. Wouldn't that be so interesting if that were true? It's very possible. So if you feel like things are looking a little different color-wise, that might be something you want to look into. Another one that can affect your vision is Viagra. It can cause cyanopsia, where everything looks like it has a blue filter. Again, you never know what's going on, but if you think you're imagining it, don't gaslight yourself. Something is going on. There's also impulsive antibiotics, the fluoroquinolones, like ciprofloxacin and levofloxacin. The hidden side effects are psychosis and brain fog. Oh, what a joy. You're just trying to cure whatever infection you got, and now you're going insane and you got brain fog. What the crap? The FDA has issued a major warning because these can cause toxic psychosis, hallucinations, and extreme paranoia, sometimes after just 1 or 2 doses. Oh my God. These are the drugs that floxed people. Patients describe a shattering of their personality, feeling like they have suddenly developed a mental illness out of thin air. It's a literal invasion of the mind by an antibiotic meant for a UTI or sinus infection. Next, we have an aggression problem. Corticosteroids like prednisone or dexamethasone for inflammation, poison ivy or asthma or other things can cause steroid psychosis or roid rage. This isn't just for bodybuilders. Even medical doses can cause manic episodes. People describe feeling bulletproof, hyper-irritable, or experiencing God-complex delusions. This is the inflated ego shadow. It's a part of us that wants to be all-powerful and untouchable. Prednisone can chemically unseal that ego, though, leading to behavior that the person would normally find appalling. The next group is known as gabapentinoids. These work by muffling the central nervous system. Think of your brain like a crowded room where everyone is shouting. Gabapentinoids don't necessarily leave the room. They put a heavy blanket over everyone. They mimic GABA, the brain's calming chemical, to slow down overactive nerve signals. Because they slow down everything, they don't just target pain. They target your processing speed, your balance, and your presence. Some of the manifestations can include dissociation. Patients often feel stupid or high in a way they didn't ask for. It's a feeling of being a few seconds behind real life. It's a feeling of being disconnected from your own body, like you're watching a movie of yourself rather than being yourself. These meds are often used to treat anxiety, But for some, the shadow effect is a sudden, deep drop into suicidal ideation or intense depression that feels cold and mechanical. It's not a sad depression, it's an empty one. It's the feeling of your soul being turned off. There's also peripheral edema, swelling. One of the most common physical marks of Lyrica is significant swelling in the hands and feet. There's also the withdrawal demon. Coming off gabapentin or Lyrica can be a nightmare. Patients describe skin crawling, extreme insomnia, and the return of the nerve storms that's much worse than the original pain. This is the guardian at the gate. When you try to stop the medication and unseal your nerves, the nervous system revolts. It's a chemical dependency that feels like the drug has claimed a part of your nervous system as its own. Next, we're going to talk about prescription cough syrups. These syrups are opioids. They don't just stop a tickle in your throat. They act on the brainstem to suppress the cough reflex. The intent is to allow a sick person to rest by essentially telling the brain to ignore the irritation in the lungs. Because they are central nervous system depressants, they don't just mute the cough, they mute the world. They slow down breathing, heart rate, and the fire of the psyche. This syrup is the base of the purple drink, or lean culture. It creates a state of intense lethargy and disassociation. It's the narcotic shadow. It's the part of us that wants to check out, to be numb, and to drift into a state where nothing matters. It's a slow-motion existence where the user feels protected by a purple veil. If it's promethazine, there's a twist. It's an antihistamine that is extremely sedating. When mixed with an opioid, it can cause vivid, waking hallucinations or lucid dreaming while standing up. Patients and recreational users often report seeing shadow people or spiders in the corner of their vision. It's as if the drug thins the veil between the waking world and the dream world. Because it's a syrup and prescribed for a cold, many people underestimate its power. This is the siren song. It feels sweet and comforting. The syrup is literally flavored like candy, but it leads to a physical binding dependency that is incredibly difficult to break for some. Next, we're going to discuss the medication Accutane. It's for severe acne. And this is such a twist. The irony of this one gets me because it's like you are depressed because you have acne. You take Accutane to get rid of your acne, and one of the hidden side effects is severe depression and personality thinning. What the crap? Accutane is famous for its black box warnings regarding suicide and depression. It dries out the skin and the oil glands, but for some reason, it seems to dry out the joy in the brain too. It creates a brittle shadow, someone who is physically clear-skinned but internally feels cracked and fragile. Next, we're going to talk about parasites. When you're treating parasites, you aren't just treating a disease, you're dealing with an invader. There's something that happens when you're prescribed antiparasitic medications and you aren't mindful. There's something called the Herxheimer reaction. When these meds start working, they kill thousands of organisms all at once. These dying parasites release a massive flood of neurotoxins, heavy metals, and waste products into your bloodstream. This often causes a healing crisis where the patient feels mentally possessed and they may experience sudden, inexplicable rage, intense brain fog, or a feeling of crawling under the skin. It's a literal battle for the body. Praziquantel is often used for tapeworms. Some parasites like Toxoplasma gondii or certain tapeworm larvae can insist in the brain. When the medication hits these brain invaders, it causes inflammation. This can lead to seizures, but also to dramatic personality shifts. Throughout history, people with these brain marks were often thought to be possessed or touched by spirits. The medication reveals that the shadow was actually a biological hitchhiker. Next, we're going to cover another med that can affect your vision, hydroxychloroquine. These are anti-malarial medications. They are in the same antiparasitic family as the other ones, though. The hidden effect is retinopathy, which is called bullseye maculopathy. Long-term use can permanently damage the retina, leaving a bullseye shape in your vision. It creates a literal blind spot in the center of your world. It's the shadow of the medicine quite literally taking your sight in exchange for your life. Many antiparasitics and broad-spectrum antibiotics don't just kill the bad guys. They clear the entire forest in the gut. 95% of your serotonin is made in your gut. After a heavy course of antiparasitics, people often fall into a chemical despair. They aren't sad about life. Their factory for joy has been temporarily demolished. You've evicted the parasites, but you've also evicted the spirit of joy. Antiparasitics show us the most brutal truth of all. Sometimes we have to poison ourselves to save ourselves. We have to wage a war inside our own veins. The shadow of these meds is the die-off, that moment where the darkness inside you fights back before it leaves. It reminds us that whether it's a parasite in the gut or a demon in the mind, the process of cleansing is never quiet. It's loud, it's painful, and it leaves a mark. This is why in episode 5, I cover parasites. I cover how to safely detox from them without having these terrible side effects with natural remedies and ways to support your body while doing it so that you don't have these terrible side effects. Similar to the Zoloft-like numbness, Zofran or ondansetron can also cause some issues. Zofran is the gold standard for nausea now because it doesn't cause the shakes like the others do, but it interferes with your serotonin. Because it blocks serotonin receptors in the gut and the brain to stop vomiting, it can cause many SSRI effects. Some users report a sudden flat gray mood or a massive headache immediately after taking it. Even the safe nausea pill can momentarily dim the lights of your consciousness. Another thing used for nausea is scopolamine patches. Those are the tiny ones behind the ear they also use for seasickness. In higher doses or in sensitive people, this drug is famously known in some parts of the world as devil's breath. It can make a person extremely suggestible or cause Alice in Wonderland hallucinations where the objects change size. It removes the will. You become a passenger in your own body, easily led by others or by the strange visions the drug conjures. Nausea meds are about control. We take them because we are afraid of losing control of our bodies by vomiting. The irony of anti-nausea meds is that in our attempt to control our stomach, we often lose control of our mind. We trade a physical heave for a psychological shatter. Control always comes at a price, though. The shadow always demands its due. Next, we're going to cover opioids like OxyContin, Vicodin, fentanyl, and the stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin. These aren't just medications, they are archetype shifters. They take the personality and warp it around a new synthetic center of gravity. They bind to the mu-opioid receptors, which are designed to handle extreme pain and reward. They cause emotional anesthesia. This is the narcissistic shadow. When someone is on heavy narcotics, their empathy often vanishes, like we discussed with some of those other meds. Because they feel perfect chemically, they become indifferent to the pain or needs of people around them. It can create a God complex of peace. The user is wrapped in a warm armor where nothing can touch them, but nothing can reach them either. It's a state of being alive but absent. For stimulants, they flood the brain with dopamine and norepinephrine, keeping the fight or flight system locked in the on position. So you could have hyperfocus versus loss of yourself. Users often report becoming incredibly productive but losing their humanity. They become cold, analytical, and obsessive. When the med wears off, the shadow flips. The person goes from superhuman to subhuman, experiencing extreme irritability, paranoia, and a total lack of motivation. The hook is it's a loan of energy from the future. You are playing a high-stakes game with your own willpower reserves. Opioids can cause meiosis, which is pinpoint pupils, while stimulants cause mydriasis, blown out huge pupils. Pinpoint pupils represents the soul's shrinking inward, closing the doors to the world. Dilated pupils represent the soul hunting, wide open and hypervigilant, looking for the next task or threat. Long-term use of narcotics can actually make you more sensitive to pain, as I was talking about with some of the other ones. The shadow of the painkiller is that it eventually becomes the cause of the pain. The body forgets how to soothe itself, creating a demon that only a drug can quiet. These next ones are often viewed as harmless, localized treatments. However, because the lungs provide a direct massive highway into the bloodstream, these medications can hit the brain with a speed that rivals an injection. We're talking about albuterol. Albuterol, which is in inhalers and also in breathing treatments. These drugs are designed to relax the smooth muscles of the airways. To do this, they mimic adrenaline. Within seconds of a puff, the heart rate spikes, the hands begin to tremble, and a chemical anxiety washes over the user. I always hated this part whenever I was having to use my inhalers because it makes you just so jittery. It's a literal inhaled panic attack. The shadow here is a body that thinks it's fighting for its life when it's actually just trying to breathe. It triggers the primal brain to look for a threat that isn't there. You also have daily preventative inhalers. I was on one of these, and they're crazy. These contain inhaled corticosteroids. While they are low dose, long-term use can still lead to systemic shadow issues like irritability, sleep disturbances, and in children, the singular light rage we discussed earlier. Because it's a slow burn steroid, the personality shift is subtle. You don't notice you've become sharper or more brittle until someone points out that your fuse has disappeared. Many inhalers can cause hoarseness or a change in the pitch of your voice. In esoteric lore, the breath is the pneuma, the spirit. When your medication changes your voice, it's literally changing the way your spirit projects into the world. It's a shadow that muffles or rasps your truth. To go along with these, sometimes people are prescribed Spiriva. It's often used for COPD or severe asthma. This blocks the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. They can cause brain fog, blurred vision, and extreme dry mouth. This is the desiccated shadow. It dries out the body's fluids and dries out the quickness of the mind. It makes the user feel like an old, brittle version of themselves. Next, we have muscle relaxers. They're a misnomer. They don't actually go to the muscle and tell it to relax. They go to the central nervous system and tell it to shut up. Drugs like Soma, Flexeril, and Baclofen work by interrupting the conversation between your brain and your body. Soma is the heavy hitter of this category. In the body, Soma metabolizes into meprobamate, an old-school anti-anxiety drug, a minor tranquilizer. It's famously part of the holy trinity of opioids, benzos, and Soma. On its own, it creates a state of intense physical and mental indifference. It creates the jellyfish shadow. You lose your spine, not just physically, but metaphorically. You become highly suggestible, emotionally floppy, and physically uncoordinated. It's the shadow of total surrender. There's also the muscle relaxer Flexeril or cyclobenzaprine. Structurally, it is very similar to the old tricyclic antidepressants. It hangs around the system for a long time, and it even has a long half-life. You could get the Flexeril hangover too, where you wake up the next day feeling like your brain is wrapped in wet wool. This is the dull shadow. It doesn't just relax the muscle, it relaxes your sharp edges, your wit, and your reaction time. Many people walk through their entire day in the sub-perceptual twilight because of the pill they took the night before. The other part of this is it can affect your heart rate. If you have pre-existing heart conditions, you should not be taking Flexeril at all. The next one of the muscle relaxers is Baclofen. It's used for severe spasticity and sometimes for alcoholism. It targets the GABA B receptors, and if the dose is too high or if you stop taking it suddenly, you can have visual and auditory hallucinations. It can cause mental clouding so severe that patients forget how to perform basic tasks. It's as if the shadow has disconnected the wires between knowing and doing. The next one is tizanidine, Xanaflex. It's an alpha-2 adrenic agonist similar to some blood pressure medications. It can cause extremely low blood pressure and fainting. This is really frustrating whenever I found this out because I was on this and I was having fainting episodes and I was going to the heart doctor and having all kinds of tests done and nobody could explain what was going on. It was probably this medication right here. You take it to relax your back and you end up flat on the floor because your shadow just cut the power to your cardiovascular system. It's insanity. This is insanity, guys. Muscle relaxers tell us that sometimes the body tension is actually a protective suit of armor. When we use these meds to strip away that armor, we often find ourselves vulnerable, sluggish, and spineless. Next, we're going to talk about benzos. Benzos work by amping up GABA, the brain's primary off switch that we talked about previously, to stop a panic attack or induce sleep by shutting down the firing neurons. They don't just shut down the bad firing, like anxiety, they shut down the hippocampus, the part of your brain that writes new memories. They can cause antegrade amnesia. This is the most famous benzo shadow. You're awake, you're talking, and you are acting, but nobody is home to record the data, just like whenever you take Ambien. People wake up the next day with no memory of the conversations they had or things they did. It is a literal gap in the soul. You become a ghost haunting your own life for 8 hours. There's also paradoxical rage. While meant to calm you, for some, especially with Xanax, it does the opposite. By lowering inhibitions, it unseals the deep shadow of rage in some people. Just like alcohol, it removes the filter. If you have 20 years of suppressed anger from some sort of trauma, the benzo can let it all out at once. This is the peaceful pill that can lead to a police standoff, literally. There's also the gray withdrawal. Benzos are one of the only drugs where the withdrawal can actually kill you, along with alcohol. This is the ultimate binding. Once the brain gets used to the off switch being held down by the pill, it forgets how to calm itself. If you take the pill away, the brain goes into a lightning storm, a seizure. It is the shadow's way of saying, if I can't have the silence, I will give you total chaos. Next, we're going to hit on steroids a little bit again, but these are anabolic, androgenic steroids. Whether they're prescribed for hormone replacement, like testosterone replacement, or used for muscle wasting, these are the ultimate identity shifters. They don't just change your body, they rewrite your social hierarchy and your primal drives. Anabolic steroids are synthetic versions of testosterone. They bind to androgen receptors throughout the body and the brain, specifically in the amygdala, the brain's emotional fear and fury center. To build tissue, repair muscle, and increase drive is their intent. When you flood the system, though, with synthetic alpha energy, the brain's natural feedback loop, the HPTA axis, shuts down. The body stops making its own spirit, relying entirely on synthetic ghost. This is where the roid rage that we spoke of earlier steps in. It's not just being angry, it's an instrumental aggression. The user begins to see every social interaction as a challenge for dominance. A simple no from a spouse or a slow driver feels like a threat to their very existence. It's the part of your psyche that wants to rule through force. The medication chemically unseals the inner dictator. There's also body dysmorphia that can happen. Despite getting bigger and stronger, the user often feels smaller and weaker. This is known also as bigorexia. This is the insecure shadow. No matter how much armor and muscle the person builds, the shadow inside feels more vulnerable than ever. The drug creates a gap between how the world sees you, a giant, and how you see yourself, a child. There's also an endocrine crash that can happen. When the cycle ends, the shadow flips into profound depression because the body's natural testosterone is suppressed. The user is left with no fire. They go from the warrior to the ghost overnight. They lose their libido, their confidence, and their spark. This is why it is so addictive. It's the only way to keep the hollow man away. These are the physical telltale signs that the shadow is present as a side effect. The cystic mark. Severe acne on the back and shoulders could be the body trying to purge the excess of testosterone. Not every time, but it can be. There's also a voice shift. In women, a permanent deepening of the vocal cords, virilization is what it's called, is another example of the pneuma or spirit being altered forever. Next, we're going to talk about blood thinners. Whether it's old school warfarin, Coumadin, or the modern DOACs like Eliquis or Xarelto, these medications change the very nature of your vital fluid. The body's ability to clot is its most basic survival seal. When you are injured, the blood seals the wound to keep the life force inside. Blood thinners artificially prevent this sealing process, though. They intend to prevent strokes or clots by keeping the blood slippery. By removing the body's ability to clot, you are removing its ability to protect itself. You are becoming a fragile vessel. This can make you think about the anxiety of the bleed. Patients on blood thinners live in a state of micro-trauma awareness. Every bump against a table or a minor cut while cooking becomes a potential shadow event that could lead to an internal hemorrhage. It shifts the personality from bold and active to cautious and fearful. It forces the user to move through the world as if they are made of glass. It can cause ecchymosis, though. It's a huge dark purple bruise appearing from the slightest touch. In ancient lore, people who were marked with purple or black spots were often seen as being under a curse of fragility. This is the shadow coming to the surface. The blood is literally leaking out of its proper channels, staining the skin from the inside. There's also temperature sensitivity that can happen with this. This is why a lot of elderly people report feeling cold. Many people on blood thinners report feeling perpetually cold. The fire in the blood is dampened. In shadow work, heat is often associated with the will and action. When blood is thinned, that internal pilot light feels diminished. Next, we're going to cover finasteride, also known as Propecia. It's used for male pattern baldness or an enlarged prostate. Post-finasteride syndrome, also known as PFS, can be a side effect. Patients report a total loss of libido, erectile dysfunction, and genital numbness. It's as if the fire in the root of the body has been extinguished. This drug blocks the conversion of testosterone into DHT. For some, this leads to profound depression, anxiety, and a total loss of libido that can persist years after stopping the pill. It's a biological emasculation that can feel like your very essence or drive has been erased. It creates a hollow shadow where the person looks the same on the outside, but the internal engine has been unplugged. Next, we're going to cover one that has become extremely popular, but can be extremely dangerous as well. I highly encourage anybody on any of these medications to really look at the side effects and look at how it affects you and if it is worth the risk. Because I can tell you, I personally know many people who have been injured by these medications, and it's infuriating because we're all just trying to get healthy. We're all just trying to be our best selves and be confident in our skin. And it's like they're taking advantage of this and using it against us by injuring us with these medications. It's so infuriating. We're going to talk about the GLP-1 medications like Ozempic and Wegovy and stuff. Of course, it can be used for people with diabetes, but it's become uber popular for weight loss. You can get anhedonia, the loss of pleasure. Because these drugs work on the brain's reward centers to stop food noise, they can actually mute all the noise. People report losing interest in hobbies, sex, and social interactions. This is the gray shadow. You lose the weight, but you also lose the flavor of life. It raises the question, if you can't feel the sweetness of life, who are you? There's also gastroparesis, the frozen gut. It can cause stomach paralysis. The drug works by slowing down digestion so you feel full longer. But for some, the stomach simply stops moving entirely. Food can sit in the gut for days fermenting. I know a person, even after they quit this medication, they still have impacts on their gastrointestinal system. They've lost part of their gut because it literally died, because it slowed it down to zero. It stopped, it never returned, and it died. This is a literal stagnation. In ancient medicine, the gut fire digestion was seen as the seat of life. When you freeze the gut, you are freezing the body's primary engine. It leads to sulfur burps too, a smell often associated in folklore with the presence of something rotten or demonic. I will admit that at one time, I tried these medications because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I can't figure it out. What is happening? Not only did it negatively affect my liver, which it's recovered now, thank goodness. It's one of the most recoverable organs that we have. It's very resilient. I did experience these sulfur burps, also known as H2S burps. They smell absolutely awful, and they're very strong, and they're lingering. I'm telling you, it's not only awful, the smell, but it's very embarrassing when you're experiencing it. I was out looking at Christmas lights with my nephew and his girlfriend, and I was just so embarrassed. And she sat there and was like, talking to my nephew, like, did you fart? And I was like, okay, guys, no, that's me. I am so sorry. I'm having these burps due to this injection. And obviously now I'm going to stop it because I'm not going to tolerate the side effect anymore because it was awful. And I don't know if anybody is aware of what H2S is, but you should go look it up because that's literally what's happening in your gut. Toxic gases that you should not inhale or else it could cause you death and serious side effects. You're burping that gas up out of your stomach as a side effect from these injections. I hope y'all all appreciated that little story, little nugget in there. I can't be embarrassed anymore. My father and my family embarrassed me enough growing up, and I just cannot be embarrassed anymore. Like, I don't even care if y'all know. So I hope y'all enjoyed that tidbit. Next, you can also have rapid muscle loss, also known as sarcopenia. It isn't just fat melting away. The body begins to consume its own muscle and facial fat pads. This is what leads to the Ozempic face you see people have whenever they're on it, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is going on with their face? A gaunt, hollow-out look can happen and make a 30-year-old look 50. It's due to this. How crappy is that? You just want to feel better and be healthy, and now you look old. Or shall I say older? The drug tricks the body into a state of starvation. The spirit of the body becomes gaunt and frail. You are shrinking the vessel so fast that the self can't keep up, leading to a distorted self-image that mirrors the bigorexia we discussed on steroids. There's also a suicidal ideation warning. This medication can cause neuropsychiatric events. GLP-1 receptors aren't just in the gut. They are in the reward centers of your brain. Because the drug blocks the reward of eating, it can accidentally block the reward of living. Regulatory agencies have investigated reports of sudden, intense suicidal thoughts in people with no prior history of depression. It's a chemical dampening field. It turns the world into a grayscale movie. If you can't feel the high of a good meal, your brain might stop seeing the point of seeking highs anywhere else too. There's also pancreatitis and thyroid tumors. This causes organ inflammation. There is a black box warning regarding thyroid C-cell tumors. We are using a drug to fix metabolic shadows like weight, but the cost might be an awakening of a much darker shadow, cancer, in the very gland that controls our energy. Next, we're going to talk about Fosamax. This is used for osteoporosis for your bone density, but it can cause auditory hallucinations and bone pain. There are eerie reports of patients starting these meds and suddenly hearing voices or seeing red-colored visual disturbances. Not only that, we're helping our bones and now we have bone pain due to this medication. Like, come on, guys. Come on. I don't know if you've ever seen the comedy show with Cat Williams where he's talking about you take one thing and then you have side effects. So you take another thing for that side effect and you take another thing for that side effect. And it's like this thing and now you're taking 50 pills all for one thing that you started to take it for initially, but due to all the side effects. It's insanity. Next, we're going to talk about oxybutynin or Detrol. It's a medication used for overactive bladders or if you have some trouble with incontinence. There's a hidden side effect of pseudodementia because these drugs block acetylcholine, which is the oil for the brain's memory gears. In older adults, these can cause confusion so severe it often is misdiagnosed as Alzheimer's. It's the foggy seal. You seal the bladder, but you fog the mind. It's a trade-off of dignity for identity. What a trade-off is that? This is not even worth it. We've spent this time walking through the aisles of the modern pharmacy, and what have we found? We found that there's no such thing as a simple pill, as I said before. These aren't just side effects. They are glimpses into the hidden rooms of the human psyche. They are the shadows that live within us, just waiting for the right molecule to let them out. What we've learned is that our shadow, those hidden darker impulses, isn't just a metaphor. It's woven into our very chemistry. When we try to suppress the body, the shadow finds a way out. Next week, we stop looking for answers in a pill bottle and start looking in the mirror. We are going to dive into shadow work. We'll explore what it means to face your inner demons and why centuries ago King Solomon used sacred seals to bind the very same forces we've talked about today. Until next time, may your path be aligned, your gnosis be clear, and the veil be ever thin. The scroll remains open. Thanks for all the love and support. Much love and positive vibes.